So I recommend that you have a very strong checklist for the files you send us, and why those files are needed. And if you're not supplying a file, to call that out too, as to I'm not supplying this, you know. So just having a holistic view of the data you send us. That being said, ODB++ and IPC 2581, they're evolving, and it's one file that has all the information in it, and you don't have to worry about not sending us a particular file. So I highly encourage IPC 2581 and ODB. And there are viewers out there, so you can look at the data before you send it to us. They're free viewers. So I also highly recommend that. Netlist is also a big deal. When we get your boards finally to the finished state and we're doing a flying probe electrical test, did we create our own netlist off of your Gerber data, or did it come built into the ODB or IPC file? And if it comes into the IPC file, much better. If the IPC file is included and we're not building it, much better, because we're then comparing to your schematic. And if you have any issues with your netlist, then, or don't supply a netlist, we're not testing to your schematic. We're still testing, but we're really only checking to what the Gerber data is, which can be wrong. The next kind of overall point I want to make is, how do you select a material? We have a material selector on our website, and we're improving it every day. Customers will pick materials based on just the electrical properties and not look at these other key areas. So we're highlighting areas that maybe you're not looking at, which are just equally as important as the electrical properties of the material. So the thermal conductivity of the material, the CTE of the material, all these things are really important. And then we would, if you're not picking a specific material, we would pick a material that is consistent in X, Y, and Z as well. And the reason for us to pick that is because as we're building board after board, we do what's called scaling. And so we would pick a material that's relatively stable, so that when we figure out or try and figure out the scaling before build, that we have a good database of that information. If we pick material that's cheaper and doesn't have good dimensional stability, it's really just messing up our own scaling database. And then the customer would also get unexpected results as well. So picking the right material, both from the customer standpoint and from the manufacturer standpoint, is a key part of the DFM. Once you pick the material, did you also pick it for the stack up? So again, a material just based on the data sheet is not good enough. So in our material selector, we have some more attributes to the materials, like, is this material suitable for blind vias and sequential lamination? Is this material suitable for solder mask? We have these extra pointers because picking a material by itself, but looking at the data sheet by itself is not enough. For a manufacturer to onboard a material into their factory is not for the faint of heart. not only do all the databases have to be updated correctly, but also the recipes have to be updated. So how are we drilling the material? What kind of plasma recipe are we using? Does it laser drill well? What's the scaling factor of the material? So all these things mean that the fabricator has onboarded the material properly. And so if a fabricator hasn't used that material or flavor of that material, they're not ready to just on your design, try a new material unless unless you have an understanding and agreement that, hey, this is what we're doing. Because things can happen that the manufacturer may not have been able to predict, like the scaling I'm talking about, or maybe like just how the material moves after lamination and things like that. So the designer can be helpful to understand, where are your cores and prepregs? Does that material flow well? And is it appropriate for your copper weights and your via structure? So knowing that upfront, and if you don't, talking to your fabricator to make sure that this type of a stack up is manufacturable, especially with those material choices, will give you a successful build.